I've always been a light sleeper, especially since I started working night shifts. My internal clock never really adjusted, so even on my days off, my body stayed alert long after midnight. That night was no different. I went to bed around 1:30 a.m., exhausted but restless, lying in the dark with my eyes half open, listening to the familiar sounds of my apartment settling. The building I live in isn't old, but it's not new either. Pipes expand, wood contracts, and every so often you hear something you can't immediately place. I've lived there long enough to recognize most of those noises. That's why what woke me up at 3:17 a.m. felt different almost instantly. At first it was just silence. Not the normal background silence of the night, but the kind that feels deliberate, like something paused. I remember opening my eyes and staring at the faint outline of my bedroom door. The hallway light was off, and the darkness beyond the door frame looked thicker than usual. Then I heard it, breathing. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It sounded close, but not inside my room. Slow, steady, and controlled. The kind of breathing you hear when someone is standing still, trying not to make noise. I held my own breath without realizing it. For a few seconds, my mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was me. Maybe I was half asleep and imagining it. I focused on my chest, trying to sync what I heard with my own breathing, but it didn't match. The sound continued, steady and patient, coming from somewhere beyond my bedroom door. I didn't move. The apartment was small. From my bedroom, the hallway led directly to the living room, then the kitchen, and finally the front door. There was nowhere for someone to be without being obvious. No corners, no hiding spots. And yet the breathing sounded like it was coming from the hallway itself, as if someone was standing just out of sight, inches away from the doorframe. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, moving as slowly as possible. The screen lit up my room in a cold blue glow, and for a moment the breathing stopped. My stomach tightened instantly. I froze again. The silence returned, heavier than before. My phone said 3:17 a.m. No notifications, no missed calls. Nothing that explained why I was awake or why my heart was pounding so hard. I turned the brightness down and locked the screen. As soon as the light disappeared, the breathing came back. This time it sounded closer. I could hear a faint wetness to it, like air moving through a mouth instead of a nose. Slow inhale, slight pause, long exhale, over and over again. Whoever or whatever was making that sound wasn't rushing. It felt intentional, almost controlled, like they knew I was awake. My first instinct was to convince myself it was coming from another apartment. Sound travels strangely at night, especially in buildings like mine. But the more I listened, the more impossible that explanation became. The breathing wasn't muffled. It didn't echo. It didn't come through walls. It sounded like it was right there in my hallway, unobstructed. I sat up in bed, every muscle tight. The mattress creaked softly beneath me, and immediately the breathing stopped again. That was the moment panic really set in. Whatever was making that sound was reacting to me. I stayed still, barely even blinking, waiting for it to start again. Seconds passed, then a full minute. My ears rang from the effort of listening so hard. I started to wonder if I had imagined the whole thing. Then I heard a subtle shift, like weight transferring from one foot to another. The breathing returned, slightly heavier now and definitely closer to my door. I stared at the handle, half expecting it to turn. My apartment door was always locked at night. I checked it obsessively. There was no way someone could be inside without breaking in, and there were no signs of that. No alarms, no noise, just breathing. I considered calling the police, but the idea felt ridiculous in that moment. What was I supposed to say? That I heard breathing? That someone might be standing in my hallway? I needed more certainty, something concrete. Slowly, carefully, I slid my feet off the bed. The floor was cold, grounding me just enough to keep from panicking. I took one step toward the door, then another, moving so slowly it felt like time had stretched. With every step, the breathing seemed to grow louder. When I reached the door, I stopped. My hand hovered inches from the handle. I could hear it clearly now, unmistakable and human. Whoever was there was standing directly on the other side of the doorway. I leaned in, pressing my ear close to the door without touching it. The breathing paused. Then, very softly, I heard something else. A faint scrape, like fabric brushing against the wall. I pulled back immediately, heart racing so hard it felt painful. That sound confirmed it wasn't just noise. There was a physical presence out there, close enough to touch the wall, close enough to hear me breathing through the door. I stepped back into the room, silently closing the distance between me and my bed. I locked the bedroom door, even though I knew it wouldn't stop much if someone really wanted to get in. It was more for my own sense of control than actual safety. The breathing didn't follow. Instead, it stayed right where it was, in the hallway, just beyond the door. Minutes passed, then longer. My legs started to ache from standing still. I didn't dare sit down or lie back in bed. I kept watching the door, waiting for a shadow to appear beneath it, waiting for any sign of movement. Eventually, the breathing changed. It became uneven, like whoever was there was struggling to keep it steady. Shorter inhales, longer exhales. Then, slowly, it began to move away, drifting down the hallway toward the living room. I followed the sound with my eyes, even though I couldn't see anything. The breathing grew quieter, more distant, until it finally stopped altogether. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I stayed standing in the middle of my bedroom until the sky outside my window began to lighten. My body felt heavy and hollow at the same time, like I had burned through all my adrenaline and was running on something colder. Every sound made me flinch. The refrigerator cycling on, a car passing outside. Even my own breathing sounded too loud. When morning finally came, nothing looked out of place. The hallway was empty, no marks on the walls, no disturbed objects. The front door was still locked, chain intact, just like I always left it. I walked through the apartment slowly, checking every room, every corner, every closet. There was nowhere someone could have stood without leaving some trace. I tried to convince myself it had been some kind of half-dream. Sleep paralysis without the paralysis. Stress, exhaustion. My mind looking for patterns in the dark. Those explanations worked well enough in daylight. They didn't work the following night. I forced myself to go to bed around the same time, telling myself that avoiding sleep would only make things worse. I left the hallway light on this time, casting a weak yellow glow under my bedroom door. I double-checked the locks again, then once more for good measure. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone face down beside me, listening. Nothing happened for hours. By the time I glanced at my phone and saw it was already past 2:30 a.m., I started to relax. My eyes grew heavy. The apartment felt normal again, familiar. At exactly 3:16 a.m., the hallway light turned off. I didn't hear a switch flip. There was no click, no sound at all. The light under my door simply disappeared, replaced by darkness so complete it felt intentional. I sat up immediately, heart slamming against my ribs. I hadn't moved. I hadn't gotten out of bed. There was no reason for the light to be off. Then from the hallway, the breathing started again. This time, it was closer than before. Too close. It sounded like it was coming from right outside my bedroom door, low and slow, as if someone was crouched there, deliberately keeping quiet. The rhythm was wrong, too controlled, too aware. I stared at the door, frozen. The breathing didn't stop when I shifted in bed. It didn't react when the mattress creaked. It just continued, steady and patient, like whoever was out there already knew exactly where I was and what I was doing. I grabbed my phone and slowly raised it, angling the screen away from the door so the light wouldn't spill into the hallway. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I pulled up the camera app and switched to video. telling myself that if something happened, at least I'd have proof this time. The breathing grew heavier. I heard a faint sound beneath it now, subtle but unmistakable. Fingertips brushing against wood, slow, exploratory, moving across the surface of the door. I bit down on my lip to keep from making any noise. The handle didn't move. Whoever was out there didn't try to open the door. They just stayed there, breathing, touching, listening. Minutes passed like that. My phone vibrated softly in my hand as the screen dimmed and the breathing stopped instantly. That reaction was immediate. Too immediate. I held the phone completely still, barely daring to breathe. After a long pause, the sound returned, quieter now, as if whoever was there had leaned back slightly. Then I heard something I still can't explain. A soft exhale, followed by a whisper of movement that sounded like someone tilting their head, listening intently through the door. I was no longer trying to rationalize anything. Every instinct in my body was screaming that I was not alone, and that whatever was on the other side of that door was very aware of me. Without thinking, I hit record. The tiny red dot appeared on my screen. The moment it did, the breathing stopped again. I waited. Nothing. Seconds stretched into a full minute. My arms started to ache from holding the phone up. I considered lowering it, convincing myself that maybe the presence had left. Then right as I started to move, the breathing came back, sharper this time, faster, like whoever was there had lost some of their patience. And then it spoke. Not a word, not a voice, just a sound that wasn't breathing. A low, almost inaudible hum, vibrating softly in the throat. It didn't form language. It didn't rise or fall in any recognizable way. It was just there, resonating against the door, close enough that I could feel it in my chest. I backed away slowly, step by step, until my legs hit the bed. I climbed onto it without breaking eye contact with the door, even though I knew I couldn't see anything. The humming stopped. The breathing continued for a few more seconds. Then I heard it move away. Not footsteps, not walking. It sounded like fabric dragging gently along the wall as the presence retreated down the hallway. The breathing faded with it, growing quieter, more distant, until it finally disappeared near the living room. I didn't move until sunrise. When morning came, I checked the video. The recording was just under 3 minutes long. The image was dark, grainy, and almost useless, but the audio was clear. You could hear my breathing, shallow and uneven. You could hear the faint sound of something touching the door, and underneath it all, you could hear the breathing from the hallway, slow, steady, unmistakably not mine. At one point, right near the end, there was a low vibration on the recording, a faint hum that sent a chill through me when I heard it again in daylight. I took the video to the building manager that afternoon. He watched it silently, then replayed it twice without saying a word. Finally, he asked if I had neighbors close by. I told him yes. Thin walls, shared hallway. He nodded, but his expression didn't change. He said sound can travel in strange ways at night. Pipes, ventilation, air pressure differences, all things I'd already told myself. I asked if anyone else had complained about noises. He hesitated before answering. He said one tenant, 2 floors below me, had moved out suddenly the week before. No notice. Left most of their furniture behind, claimed they couldn't sleep anymore because of someone standing in the hallway at night. The manager laughed awkwardly after saying it, like it was a coincidence too strange to sit with for too long. I moved out a month later. The breathing never followed me to my new place. The nights are quiet again, normal. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night and everything feels a little too still, I remember how controlled that breathing sounded, like it wasn't wandering, like it was waiting,